Marco to rely against a sleep powder against Gio's team, specifically as you have the Whimsicott, who is immune, you have Golden Go with its ability who's immune, and Terra, Grass, Incineroar as well. But all those grass typings would be really bad into a Charizard and a Torkoal. So we'll see how this game plays out. Charizard Porygon 2 is the lead for Marco Silva, Giovanni Costa with Whimsicott and Dragonite, two of his favorite Pokemon of all time.
We saw Marco use this lead a couple times yesterday. Really keeps your opponent guessing on whether you're going out quickly with offense with Charizard or going to be setting up with Porygon 2. We get a preview that it's the Incineroar and the Ursaluna in the back, so you can go into the Trick Room mode here, or you can go out quickly with offense with Charizard and just threaten a KO to Whimsicott on the other side. But unlike Covert Cloak Whimsicott, this one will be able to take a fire move. You'd have to put 2 attacks into it. Gives it a little bit more staying power. Encore is also disruptive against the Porygon 2. Against some teams, Marco might want to Trick Room and switch the Charizard out. You would just be forced to switch the Porygon after, but for now, just a Moonblast into Porygon. Some good chip, and a critical hit means it's even better chip. Charizard Heat Wave's going to miss a target. Whimsicott, the better target, dodges it. Charizard just does a bit of damage to Dragonite. Yeah, now Dragonite with Choice Band Outrage landing into Charizard. That is a clean one-hit KO on turn 1 of this game. So Charizard really not being a good first partner Pokemon to Marco, missing that Heat Wave. But fortunately, Porygon will take out the Dragonite because of the double hits from Heat Wave and Ice Beam. So each of these players have lost one of their big, powerful Pokemon on turn 1. A fireworks of a start. Gio probably doesn't get exactly what he was hoping for there. The Moonblast was probably meant to be enough chip to have Outrage KO to Porygon. I'm not sure if it would have been enough damage. That's a lot to ask, but Choice Band Dragonite Outrage is a lot of damage. Charizard had been stuck on the field just using Heat Wave against Dragonite, and Dragonite had not taken an Ice Beam. That turn looks a lot better for Gio. But because the Whimsicott dodges the Heat Wave, Gio only loses the Dragonite, still gets a crucial KO against the Charizard. Kind of funnels Marco into one speed direction, just has 3 slow Pokemon left now instead of the dynamics of having both fast and slow Pokemon. And the Golden Go comes out here. Again, chip onto Porygon 2 is valuable. You're more realistically threatening a KO into Porygon 2. Something like Moonblast and Terra Steel make it rain, but Incineroar is a problem. Can fake out Whimsicott, like we talked about. No Covert Cloak here. Can also put damage into the Golden Go and really isn't threatened by much the Golden Go can do. This Golden Go doesn't have a coverage move to go after Incineroar because it has the Trick and Protect.
The only way Whimsicott could have gotten around a fake out would have been terrestrializing into a Ghost type, but that is not what Giovanni wants to do. Instead, will Terra steal this Golden Go, doing even more damage with those Steel type attacks. A second Moonblast into Porygon gets a special attack drop, but no critical hit this time around. So it's at pretty much 50% HP. But the Terra Steel boosted Make It Rain into Porygon gets the KO. So Marco is down to his last 2 Pokemon here in this game. Incineroar doesn't take too much damage, will respond with a Flare Blitz as well into Golden Go for the knockout. So Giovanni down his Terra.
The fireworks continue. Both players getting really significant KOs. No fake out from Incineroar means that there is the damage of the double up to just bully down this Porygon 2. That's a difficult thing to do, but Gio has the offense to do it. But then no fake out means it's a Flare Blitz coming back into the Golden Go on the other side. Still, between the Make It Rain and the Flare Blitz recoil, the Incineroar got low enough health that even after the Citrus Berry, it's just over 50% health. But now both players down to 2 Pokemon. The pivoting is gone. The speed control is gone. We are all about the last damage trading. What Pokemon this is in the end for Gio is crucial. Incineroar, not the worst pick, has Intimidate against both of these Pokemon, but of course being weak to ground means it's pretty vulnerable to Ursaluna here. Terastallization has already been spent. No way to get Incineroar out of that, but at least there's fake out pressure on this turn.
Yeah, and it's a tough call for, or a tough spot for Marco, I should say, with his Ursaluna already being intimidated as the Incineroar comes out. There's no more switching, but Gio does not have the parting shot. It's instead U-turn and Assault Vest. So at least for Marco's benefit, Gio can't chain parting shots and continue to lower Ursaluna's attack.
Right, just has to go out on the offense here. Probably won't get many chances to do it. Could fake out on this turn to slow Ursaluna down for a turn. The Whimsicott Focus Sash is important here. It means that 1 Flare Blitz isn't enough to pick up a KO, so Whimsicott may get a couple attacks off. The first one of those is a Moonblast into Incineroar. It looks like it'd be a 2-hit KO into that Incineroar, or maybe just a 1-hit KO after this Flare Blitz deals a lot of recoil back to Incineroar.
Yeah, Flare Blitz is going to do essentially, or going to have 99% of that HP done. The recoil is enough for Incineroar to knock itself out. So do we give credit to Whimsicott, credit to Incineroar knocking himself out. Either way, it means Marco has one Pokemon remaining. Flare Blitz from Incineroar here into Ursaluna does about 40%, a little bit of recoil damage as well, but the Facade takes out that last HP remaining on the Whimsicott. So now it is Incineroar versus Ursaluna.
I don't think that played out the way that Gio needed it to. The Flare Blitz doesn't look like it'll be a KO. There's no way for Incineroar to protect itself and mount the burn damage either. I would expect the Headlong Rush is a KO back into this, but for now Flare Blitz down to 34 HP. Ursaluna's going to get to attack.
Yeah, he has the Headlong Rush into the Incineroar slot, and a very explosive game one lands Marco Silva, one victory away from the finals here in Toronto.
Gio may be expecting that Ursaluna would protect itself on that second to last turn. Something like a Moonblast there instead of into the Incineroar would have allowed the Flare Blitz.
Right, to activate the burn, right? You want to protect first.
And because the Fake Out was being threatened into that slot anyway, but instead, I think Marco makes some really smart targeting. Gets rid of the Whimsicott so that there's no extra Moonblast and doesn't have to Headlong Rush the first turn, which would have lowered its special defense, maybe made it vulnerable to Moonblast. Just gets the Whimsicott off the field and then is bulky enough to take the KO onto Incineroar. Really delicately played 2v2 because we had such an explosive opening of the game with these big KOs like onto the Porygon 2 here. That meant we just got down to 2 Pokemon and players had very little flexibility. It was just down to that last bit of targeting and neither player had a decisive advantage.
So Marco was able to come away with the victory here in game one. And from Gio's perspective, Len, Marco didn't even bring the quote-unquote Sun Core, right? The main crew of the team in Torkoal and Jumpluff. So how do you adjust here knowing that Marco was able to have the advantage in game and win the game without those main Pokemon?
Oh, I think all the Pokemon are main Pokemon. I think this is a set of Pokemon Marco uses frequently. You don't have to rely on the Torkoal and the Jumpluff. The fact that the Jumpluff doesn't have instant Tailwind, you'd have to commit, to get a full speed advantage with it, you'd have to commit both Chlorophyll and having Jumpluff on the field, which means bringing both of those Pokemon. I think all 4 of the others have pretty important roles to play. The Charizard ended up being somewhat disposable in that game, just got a Heat Wave off and then went down to Outrage. But if it's the Golden Go lead instead, it would have a pretty impactful role. Whereas if you lead Jumpluff into Golden Go, things might start to look bad quickly. So you can see why the Charizard was led for that reason. I'm not sure there's that much incentive for Marco to change up the recipe here, unless it's to have an even more Trick Room focused mode, because Gio doesn't have a great way to deal with eruptions coming out inside of Trick Room. Lots of 2 fire weak Pokemon, a couple of other frail Pokemon, 3 fire resist, so you'd have to do some work ahead of time. You gotta do your homework to get them chipped down or to have Ursaluna on the field as well. But if you do think it's things like Sneasler and Golden Go left at the end, then Torkoal could be a huge win condition.
Yeah, we'll see if Marco makes any adjustments. He is the one in the driver's seat right now with that game 1 victory. For now, it will be the Incineroar standing next to Porygon 2 in the lead, up against Dragonite. Whimsicott yet again for Gio. Dragonite cannot have its attack lowered thanks to the inner focus ability, and Porygon 2 gets a special attack boost.
If Marco wants it, can fake out the Whimsicott to prevent this possible Moonblast and Outrage, but doesn't want it. It's Moonblast, it's Outrage again, but the Outrage into Incineroar, not into Porygon, and it's not a KO.
Incineroar hangs on way better than Charizard did last time around. Will eat that Citrus Berry, but it's still already incredibly low at this point. And no fake out, no Flare Blitz into Whimsicott. Instead, the parting shot into that Choice Band Dragonite, lowering its attack by 1 stage and allowing Marco to switch out here. Did adjust, no Charizard. It's the Torkoal Ursaluna. It's full Trick Room in the back.
Yeah, has the 4 slowest Pokemon on the team ready to commit to Trick Room. We saw the moves locked in. We know that Trick Room is the next thing coming. I still don't know if Outrage would have been a KO into Porygon 2, but we still didn't see it happen. Outrage goes into the other slot,
we'll find out.
And so Porygon successfully gets this Trick Room up. And now that Eruption plus Ice Beam combination is being threatened because Gio has Incineroar, which would resist both, which may be coming in here, but otherwise Garchomp and and Dragonite, the other fire resist, both weak to Ice Beam. But of course, Whimsicott, we talked about this before the game, can just encore anytime a Trick Room comes up. Porygon 2 did not switch out, and so will just be going for another Trick Room this turn after this Eruption.
Yeah, we'll be forced to retwist those dimensions. Marco getting caught off guard. Whimsicott, very well known for that prankster encore ability, making it go faster in the, it doesn't matter because he has priority, so even in the twisted dimensions, it won't matter. Outrage into Porygon. Well, there's your answer. The double up Moonblast plus Outrage is not enough for a KO.
That is after a parting shot from the Incineroar earlier on, so without it, would have done some more damage, but still probably not a KO. But yeah, undoing that Trick Room really significant here because now Outrage is coming out again this turn. It may be difficult to set Trick Room again. You may be relying on Outrage targeting to make it happen. Encore is such an interesting move because sometimes it's almost like a I think they have to respect it. It's like a negotiated piece where you just expect that that they won't actually stay in, and so you don't click Encore. Geo there forcing Marco to respect it, and he didn't. Porygon stays in, gets Encored, and put into a pretty difficult spot. It's maybe staying on the field just to go for another Trick Room here, though.
But the Torkoal will have itself eject packed out on this turn because Incineroar swapped in, lowering its attack stat with that Intimidate. So now Marco gets to have a free switch into his Ursaluna at the start of this turn. Geo still has an Outrage coming in one of these two Pokemon's direction, and it's the Ursaluna with the critical hit, and that's a one-hit KO. Ursaluna never even gets a chance to play the game.
Ursaluna forced on the field by the Intimidate onto the eject pack, and then simply KO'd with a critical hit Outrage. Really significant, that critical hit. Without it, and with -1 attack because of the parting shot earlier on in the game, Ursaluna would have survived the attack, burnt itself. Trick Room would have gone up and at least threatened some offense. I think the game would have still been distinctly in Geo's favor. The Porygon 2 still would have had to switch, but now the Porygon 2 has to switch. The Trick Room's up, but the Porygon 2 just looks like it's in such a bad position. It is weakened. It may be forcing Incineroar in so that it doesn't Trick Room once again this turn, and Torkoal doesn't have great eruption targets on the other side. Those are 2 fire resists sitting over there. The only bright spot here is that Dragonite is confused. If it decides to Outrage again, we'll have to risk that. We'll probably just see it switch out instead, which is probably reasonable. There's not that much value in the Whimsicott at this point. You don't really need it to Tailwind in this matchup. For now, Porygon 2 can't click Trick Room again and Incineroar coming in.
There's just something about Giovanni, Costa, and Dragonite together on the stream. The magic that happens with that critical hit. Now Incineroar swapping in for Marco. Geo, as you predicted, will switch out since it was confused. Don't want Dragonite to hurt itself in confusion. Let Whimsicott go down, take this damage from the eruption. So Whimsicott's knocked out. Incineroar in the sun, but being a fire type will still resist that, as well as the Assault Vest. That's a different dynamic here, as most Incineroar are not Assault Vest. They have a Citrus Berry or a Safety Goggles. So the U-turn allows Geo to swap this Incineroar out on this turn after taking the eruption.
And now the Outrages are just enormous, right? You can send out the Dragonite, just start clicking Outrage again. Everything may be in KO range for it. Torkoal might be able to take one, but a Torkoal that's already taken one is a pretty neutered Pokemon. And then you can have Incineroar to really just, you intimidate the Incineroar on the other side. You can threaten that fake out here. Just the potential for offense is so difficult for Marco because the idea that you would need a Trick Room again to have much threat, and Porygon 2 is low health and not on the field. Like, how do you get it in and survive a hit and then Trick Room? This game just feels completely in hand for Geo. Marco's going to have to plot a miracle. Terastallization might be the beginning of that miracle if you can get Ghost Terra through a fake out. But for now, Dragonite just looks so threatening.
And now Marco's going to have to decide what fire attack he wants to click on the Torkoal right now between the Eruption and Overheat, opting for the Eruption, which is going to cost him some special attack, but really hoping that additional damage will be enough here in this moment. Terra Ghost on the low health Incineroar to avoid a potential fake out. Now as a Ghost type would be immune from the fake out. Does Geo fall for it? No, the Extreme Speed goes in to Torkoal, bringing it down to around 70% HP. Overheat into Dragonite is not enough nearly for a KO. Going to lower his special attack as well. And the Flare Blitz from Geo's Incineroar into the now Ghost Incineroar does not matter. That's a knockout.
Geo wants to know that he gets to control the targeting, that he wouldn't just be outraging into a protect and so then locks into extreme speed. Would have run some risk of being against a Ghost Terastallization with extreme speed, but of course Flare Blitz just picks up that KO and gets the knockout. Now being able to choose his targeting, and with Porygon 2 unable to protect, you can just throw an extreme speed and a Flare Blitz in that slot on this turn, pick up that KO as well. Torkoal, one of the worst Pokemon in the game to have last as your last thing against several Pokemon and no speed control.
Yeah, Torkoal with diminishing returns, obviously, on those overheats, right? Where every turn you are lowering your special attack by 2 stages more and more. So going to be tough, especially into this dragon typing and fire typing on the other side. Now it's time for Gio to terrestrialize here with the Dragonite into the normal typing. This is the traditional Terra normal Dragonite we've seen throughout the most of Scarlet and Violet's history. No loaded dice necessary, just Terra normal extreme speed into the Porygon 2 for the knockout.
Yep, amplifies the damage on this turn. Was smart to not do it on the last turn since overheat went into that slot. The Dragon type helped take that hit. Now the overheat will go into the Dragonite though and pick up the KO.
And now with Dragonite down, it is Incineroar and Gio's last Pokemon in the back against just a -4 Torkoal, who's very, very slow. Incineroar will actually U-turn smartly on this turn so he can switch out into its other teammate, get Incineroar back, and then have access to the fake out yet again the next turn.
Incineroar just cycles out. Torkoal could diffuse a fake out with Protect. Writing is probably on the wall, though. I don't think instead the Torkoal is going to deal with the Incineroar itself. But if there's one Pokemon that Torkoal would want to have to deal with last, it would be the Golden Goat, unable to protect itself because of the choice specs. The fake out and diffuse turn will help get through Trick Room. Marco knows that's the case, and so concedes this game and brings us into a Game 3.
Yeah, we said we might find out the Outrage Porygon 2 interactions in Game 3. We are going to get to that moment, but I think with Whimsicott being, last game around, it was doing solid damage with the Moonblast in Game 1. It's just not enough. That's not what Whimsicott is known for, right? So let Whimsicott do its job, do the Encore, get it off the field, and let the damage dealers take over.
I don't know. Gio's Whimsicott is doing so much more damage than most Whimsicotts. We saw it chunking King Gambit with Moonblast earlier on, chunking Incineroar with Moonblast in this match. Definitely trained to be more offensive than most Whimsicott are, which is something you can get away with because of the Focus Sash that lets it take the Eruption here and stay on the field for later on. Really, the pivotal moment of that game is the Encore on Trick Room. If Marco had actually been able to successfully use that Trick Room, get a lot of damage down during it, Gio would have been in trouble. But because the Trick Room got reversed, and then Marco had to spend even more resources to set it another time and then switch afterwards, the Encore really cost Marco 3 full turns. It's the turn where you undo Trick Room, the turn where you set Trick Room again, and the turn where you're forced to switch. That is a hugely costly mistake to have it get encored in that way. Maybe an overstepping of assuming Gio would switch or not actually go for it and just expect the switch on the other side. And so when there's one distinct moment in a match like that, it can lead to both players maybe being more willing to stick to their guns, because Marco may expect, like, if I don't make that mistake, if I don't let that happen, I could have won from that position, and so he does not change his leads. Gio, on the other hand, though, does not lead Whimsicott for the first time. Maybe saw the Outrage damage and decided that wasn't really a threat in the KO, and so we'll go for Make It Rain plus Outrage as a possible KO into Porygon 2. Of course, you cannot fake out either of these Pokemon, the Ghost type in one hand and still Inner Focus on this side, so just Make It Rain coming out quickly. 50% to Porygon 2. That's enough damage to lock in.
Yeah, that is a lot into the Porygon 2, bringing it to 50%. But who does Dragonite target? It's the Incineroar. This Porygon 2 just does not ever draw the attention of outraged Dragonite on the other end. Incineroar is knocked out, but that gives Porygon Marco a free switch with Twisted Dimensions going up.
And with Torkoal coming in this time, this is so much worse for Gio, because there isn't a Focus Sash to make sure one of your Pokemon can live through the turn, and there also isn't the threat of the Encore. This is very easy Ice Beam plus Eruption into Dragonite, and just make Gio respond to it, right? He's going to have to double switch here. Neither Pokemon can protect through this turn. You can use a Terrestrialization to try to take one of the hits, but even like normal Dragonite then takes full strength Eruption. And so it's going, and then Golden Goat just had Steel Terrestrialization, couldn't mitigate it at all, and so is forced to switch. Incineroar are the best Pokemon at taking these attacks, but it's going to be an uphill battle now with 4 turns of Trick Room starting from this one.
Yeah, this Torkoal fortunately will not get an attack this turn from Gio's perspective because the Intimidate activates Eject Pack, so he does not have to take an Eruption this turn, just the likely Ice Beam. But this is effectively a position Trick Room players love to be in. Gio does not Terrestrialize Dragonite. He takes the 4-time super effective Ice Beam for the one-hit KO.
Yeah, could have used the pressure of the Intimidate, forcing the switch on Torkoal to allow a normal Terrestrialization that would have allowed an Outrage. You're kind of relying on a targeting choice there. If it doesn't KO the Porygon, you may not have gained that much, and if it does KO the Porygon, then you put Ursaluna on the field next to Torkoal with 3 turns of Trick Room left. That may be hard to survive, even if you have a 4-2 Pokemon advantage. So instead, Dragonite just goes down to Ice Beam there, and we see Sneasler for the first time in the match. But in a position it does not want to be in. This isn't Focus Sash Sneasler because this Focus Sash is on Whimsicott, instead White Herb, which means it's very vulnerable to offense from this Ursaluna, which got to come on the field and burn itself because of the eject pack. Normally it's Marco activating his own eject pack to accomplish this, but this time it was Gio just forcing it off the field with Intimidate. And with how the turn ended up playing out, the Eruption wouldn't have been that significant anyway. Gio didn't really gain anything by forcing the Torkoal out into the back. For now, Incineroar just forced to switch. Can't risk taking a ground move from the Ursaluna, but of course you're switching to another ground-weak Pokemon.
Neither can Goldengo afford to take a ground attack from Ursaluna. Now with 3 turns of Trick Room remaining, Marco can feel it in Game 3. He is so close to moving on to the finals here in Toronto, terrestrializing Ursaluna into a Ghost type, so it's no longer weak to close combat, now immune to Sneasler's close combat as well as the fake out. Sneasler wants to just try to make it through Trick Room in fully intact, and it's going to take a couple of turns of protects from the Sneasler. Ursaluna with the Facade into Goldengo as a normal type. This is no Blood Moon Ursaluna that can hit those Ghost types with normal attacks. This is regular that Goldengo makes himself immune to.
Gio really gets away with one there, manages to get the Goldengo in. Marco probably expecting a terrestrialization on the Incineroar that would have allowed it to take a ground move because of the grass terrestrialization, and hoping to Facade through that. Instead, it's Goldengo coming in to take the Facade, which is really the kind of space Gio needs to buy. Gio also has the only Pokemon on the entire team that can Protect out there, using Protect to get through one of these turns of Trick Room, but there's still a couple left. Still an uphill battle for Gio to fight through this, because once again, Goldengo unable to protect itself up against the Ursaluna on the other side. Sneasler just protected last turn, doesn't have a Focus Sash, is super vulnerable, but for now Porygon 2 isn't threatening a KO against either of those Pokemon, so it withdraws to get Torkoal back on the field to threaten that double damage, both the Ursaluna and the Torkoal.
Yeah, Goldengo will swap out for Gio, wanting to preserve that potential Facade trick for later on in this game. Incineroar will intimidate Marco's Pokemon, bringing Ursaluna down, -1 attack, but because of the Flame Orb boost with that Guts ability, it does so much damage, and a Headlong Rush into either of those Pokemon was going to be a clean one-hit KO, so Gio deciding I'd rather Incineroar get knocked out, land and Intimidate, and save my Goldengo. There's going to be only 1 more turn of Trick Room remaining after this one, and Sneasler does have access to Protect, right, to try to get through it.
Sneasler has access to Protect, Goldengo does not. Goldengo also does not have access to a defensive terrestrialization. It can Terra, but it will still be through both fire and ground. A ton of offense is coming through. So Sneasler, also with no spread moves, is not a Pokemon that can win a 1v3. It can put one close combat somewhere, even if it gets a KO with all these Pokemon that are weak to it, it will just go down in response to that. Goldengo has no way to make it through this turn. Marco has virtually won this already, unless Gio has something up his sleeve that I don't know about.
We've seen Gio before on stream come away with these victories, so we'll see what happens. This is a fully powered Eruption from Torkoal into the Steel typing Goldengo, so that's going to be so massive, and he cannot withstand the damage. Goldengo one-hit KO, and it's 3v1. Sneasler's been the talk of the format, probably the most important Pokemon in Regulation H, but even with how strong it has been, it cannot handle a 1v3.
No, simply by the nature of being a single targeting Pokemon. Also doesn't threaten a one-hit KO against either of these Pokemon, and these Pokemon
especially without the close combat.
Both threaten a one-hit KO back at it. You know, you can look at the turn where Sneasler failed to double protect but wasn't attacked anyway, but even if it gotten an attack off on that turn, it wasn't going to change anything. This really all goes back to that turn 1 where Gio bet the house on Outrage going into Porygon 2 and didn't get it. When that Outrage instead picked up the KO onto Incineroar and allowed the Trick Room plus free entry for Torkoal, it was nearly over already. Just a raw 50-50 on turn 1 that puts Marco ahead and into the finals.
Yeah, Gio with the Dire Claw, bringing Ursaluna down to half. Sneasler taken out, and Marco Silva comes from Europe and will find himself in the finals of the Toronto Regional Championship.